Hi, it's Ryan from Untitled Chapter, and in this video I'm going to be sharing tips on how to photograph fireworks as well as the gear used. So let's get into it. Our location for this video is the beautiful city of Sydney, being the capital of New South Wales, Australia. Now there are a couple of very well-known landmarks here in Sydney, being the Sydney Opera House and the Harbour Bridge. There's also so many other amazing things here as well, so we've been to a few different locations like Paddy's Market. We're going to be filming the rest of this video in Darling Harbour, and a few other spots that will be flashing up on the screen about now that really make Sydney such an interactive and vibrant city, with so many different opportunities for street photography as well as broader landscape and cityscape photography. Let's quickly have a look at the gear we're going to be using for photographing fireworks. Starting off, looking at the camera. Now it's not so much about the camera, it's actually about the lens. This one is a Fujifilm 10 to 24mm lens, which is wide angle. It gives a really nice broad perspective, and because we're going to be close to the fireworks, that means that they're going to be much higher than what they would be if we were standing way back looking in with a zoom lens. So most of the time you'll be using a wide angle lens if you're going to be close to the action. If you're a bit further back, use something a bit more zoomed in. But for this, 10 to 24 is going to be a perfect focal length. So a wide angle lens is certainly my favorite and definitely a recommendation for you. Second thing is a solid tripod. This is a Series W1204. It's a really nice solid tripod. It's pretty lightweight, being carbon fiber, but it also stands at about 6 foot tall. But having a good solid tripod is going to be incredibly helpful in just making sure that your camera is on a solid base so that you're not going to get image movement or blur from the camera moving while you're actually photographing. Third thing is a cable release. Now this is just a tiny little Canon RS60E3. It's got a simple 2.5mm plug on the end, and this pretty well works on most cameras. Like I'm using it here with the Fuji cameras. I used to have this on my Canon cameras, and it's just super simple. I'm not saying that that's the best remote in the world, but it's basic and it works. If you are interested in any of these, there are links in the description down below as well. The last thing, and not a necessity, but certainly something that I find very beneficial, is a Nissi natural night filter. And I'll explain that a little bit more later on. So now that we've had a quick look at the gear, let's get into the shooting side. Now right behind me is Darling Harbour. This is where the fireworks go off from. Right now we're standing on the bridge overlooking the International Convention Centre and the Sofitel. This is actually a really popular spot, but for what we did, we actually filmed from down the bottom. Now I didn't do any filming while the fireworks are going off because they are only running for probably 5 to 10 minutes, but they do make for a great little show. There was also a lot of people down there, so I've done a tiny bit of video footage while the fireworks are going off, and I will overlay that now so you can see as a reference what I was using for a foreground as well as leading lines and what the fireworks looked like throughout the entire display. For a few tips on actually photographing the fireworks, as base settings, I usually recommend somewhere around ISO 200. That gives you a reasonable amount of light on the sensor without causing too much grain or noise. An f-stop of 9, so f9, that will give you a pretty good depth of field to cover a lot of scenes. Now that may change depending on what you need to actually photograph and what you want in focus.
for this, I wanted quite a big depth of field, and I was using a wide-angle lens, which gives me a lot more in focus than what a, say for example, a 70 to 200 zoom would do. So just as an idea, use those as base starting points. They are not the holy grail, be all and end all of photographing fireworks. For shutter speed, this is where it gets a little bit dependent on the amount of fireworks, your distance, and a few different light factors as well. If you're photographing in a city, there may be a lot of light around, or artificial light, that then introduces that into the image. Whereas if you're shooting somewhere like a beach, the only light being introduced, usually, is the fireworks. Now for this example, and where we're shooting here at Darling Harbour, there is a bit of artificial light. However, it's not enough to impact the actual image from where we were taking it, photographing back towards the main part of the city. If we were shooting here on the bridge as an example, the colourful lights and everything on the background would then introduce a bit more artificial light, which changes the shutter speed requirements. As a general rule of thumb, for a good amount of firework photography to capture quite a few bursts and rays and streaks and all that kind of stuff, you want to be shooting somewhere between 6 and 12 seconds. Now 12 is on the longer end obviously, but that also means you need less fireworks to then create the streaks. If you shoot for 12 seconds on gold fireworks for example, they come out as a really hot white. And the more of those you have, the brighter it gets and the quicker your image will become overexposed. Now for that as an example, you're going to want that more around the 6-second mark. Because the fireworks are brighter, they easily burn out faster. So as a general rule of thumb, the brighter the fireworks and the more fireworks, the shorter the shutter speed needs to be to keep an even exposure. Of course, there are ways that you can adjust that by increasing your aperture or slightly decreasing your ISO to allow less light through and therefore a longer shutter speed, but that is entirely your creative decision. Now most digital cameras will have a bulb mode, which is what I recommend shooting in to vary your shutter speeds very quickly. Using that cable release I talked about earlier in the video as well, that's going to help in really aiding this whole process and making everything just that bit easier to really try and capture. Finding focus, especially if the fireworks are being fired from a barge, for example, like they are on most water scenes, that makes for a perfect focal point. If you can really nail focus on that area, you'll know that when the fireworks are shot straight up, that they will be in focus. If fireworks aren't being fired from a barge, then focus about a third of the way through your frame, and with that f9 aperture, you're going to get a pretty good depth of field going through your image. There's usually some point as well that fireworks might be buried in sand or dirt, just to keep them stable, and if you can find that, that would make for an awesome spot to find that focus. And now the last thing I will mention is I was actually shooting with the Nissi natural night filter on. Now I absolutely love this night filter. It does so much working with the colors by removing horrible color casts and really giving natural tonality and color by removing those really horrible yellowy sort of warmish tones that really aren't flattering to a lot of night photos. So this Nissi natural night filter really helps bring out and make pop the images that I've captured. If you are interested in a Nissi natural night filter or finding out a little bit more about how this filter actually works, click the card in the top over here and check the link in the description down below for more info on both. Thanks for watching the video, and I hope that you found it useful with a few tips on how to photograph fireworks from here in Sydney. If you did enjoy it, hit that likes up button, comment down below, subscribe with the bell icon so you don't miss any future videos. See you in the next one.